The next tool we're going to be looking at is called Stack AI. So unlike VoiceFlow and Chatbase, Stack AI is specifically focused on building language models specifically trained on the data sets you're providing it. So its only focus is AI. It has no other implication. While Chatbase was focused on AI, it is nowhere near as detailed and in-depth and allows you to fully customize these models with no code. In fact, on their website right here, it says the no-code generative AI platform. It is built for this. So this is why I like Stack AI. And let's just get right into the dashboard so I can show you how to set this up. So in the dashboard, you're gonna see something like this where you start off with, well, no projects, but we're gonna create a new one together. Now, mind you that this will also be a very simple project. We're not gonna go and cover every single detail there is to know in Stack AI, because that would be, of course, its own course just by itself. We're gonna cover the basics though, show you how to integrate with Bubble and some of its capabilities. Maybe down the road, we go super in depth on some of these tools because I think it'd be super fun. But let's stick with just scraping the surface for now and select one of the templates here that has simple chatbot. In fact, let's actually go a little bit more complex and chat with a website. So we'll click chat with a website. Let's go into this template. Now inside the template, you're gonna be seeing a bunch of stuff come up and you're like, all right, what the hell is all this? Don't worry, we're gonna break it down here. So it looks kind of like VoiceFlow, right? You have these flows, you have these lines connecting each of these modules together, etc. So let's see how this all works together. Let's ignore this left side for now, and I just want to run this sequence and see what happens. So if we zoom in, you can see here that we have input, known as in-tac0. Now, next to each of these modules, you're gonna see some sort of symbol or variable next to the module. So if we come down here to URLs plus search, you see URL embed tac0, and then you kind of see that they're using these variables. But I'm even getting ahead of myself here. Let's go back and just stick with our input. So you can see who is the main character is the input, and let's follow a line. So this first line goes and connects this input over here to OpenAI. So they're connecting to OpenAI's module or model in our case, and we're using GPT 3.5 Turbo. Of course, you can select different modules. Some things will be on a paid plan. Just note that we are on a free plan. So to do some capabilities, you will need to upgrade, but it gives you what we're used to seeing, the instructions and the prompt. So that's nothing really new. Then you can see it connects to an output, which assumingly is where the output goes, what the AI response is gonna be, and that's where it's gonna be stored. So if we go back and follow another path, we have the input and a line down here to URLs plus search. So it looks like it's taking this input and it's gonna perform a similarity search based on the website data that gets embedded and stores in Stack AI's vector database. So remember, for them to be able to do this, they have to be storing this data somewhere themselves. And in this case, when it's no code, we don't really need to worry about that, right? We just know how it works here. But in the back end, that is how it's working. It'll take your input, perform similarity search here based on the website, and then that takes that, and then from here, we go to the LLM itself. So input provides the similarity search, then looks at our model, our instructions over here, and then you can see the prompt right here, moving on to the output. So hopefully that makes a little bit of sense. Let's run it and see what happens. So we run this. You can see that it says, I'm sorry, but without any information, the main character or context provided, I cannot determine who the main character is. So it looks like we don't have a URL here to specify any sort of main character, and it was looking for that. So if you look at the prompt here, the prompt OpenAI got was context, then it got URL EMB tac0 as a variable, which is this, whatever information is here, which was nothing. It was null, empty, and then it just went right on to question, which is the input, and then it gave us, well, I'm sorry, but you didn't give me anything to work with, which is true. So we need to fix this. Let's do it with a different example and stick with our WGMI Labs example in the previous lesson. Let's say, what services do you offer? Okay, so we say, what services do you offer? And then we need to train this on our website. So let's zoom in here and add WGMILabs.com. And and we'll add it. Please enter a URL. So you can assume this means it wants the full URL. Let's come and get not the academy, but labs.com. So it's really looking for HTTPS in our case. So let's come back. Let's give it the more formal URL, and then we'll add. See, it's pending under the status of learned, and it's already done, so that was pretty quick. Now, sometimes this is a little finicky. So if you do this and it's not referencing your knowledge base, the URL you inputted, just go ahead and delete, try to re-upload and do it again, refresh. Make sure you don't do advanced scraping. That can also cause problems. So it is a little bit finicky. Just be careful of that and wary of that if you come across errors. But let's see how this works next. If we run this as is, let's see what the answer is. So the services offered include transforming designs into functioning software, providing unlimited development requests and revisions, fast delivery, etc. So it was able to get information from our knowledge base and use the input that we had up here. Now, there is a whole lot more that goes into Stack AI itself. I just want to introduce to you the tool, but let's go over just maybe a few things. If you click on each module, notice there's a settings icon, and you can actually change different settings if you know what you're doing here. So we didn't really cover results. You know what max characters are. Embeddings, you are familiar with this. So we have the embeddings model here that it's using to store that information. Chunking algorithm, we don't know what that is. Chunk overlap and chunk length, again, not something we covered. But you can see that there is so much more in-depth detail that you can change to customize this to your liking. So just look at all those things, go through it. In fact, maybe we do film an in-depth course on Stack AI. That might be super fun. But let's go over here to the sidebar and see what we have available to us. Inputs, of course, we just have our regular inputs and outputs the same. If we come to LLMs, though, we have access to a ton of different LLMs, not just OpenAI. So this is a super robust tool that allows you to play with all LLMs, customize each one specifically. It has different knowledge bases that you can use. Look at all the examples they have down here. You can use APIs, which would allow us access to any data out there as a knowledge base. Then we have Notion, Google Drive, AWS S3, OneDrive, and of course our URLs, documents, which are our basic knowledge bases. But look how in depth it goes. And then you can even go to your data loaders to specifically upload data according to what type of data it is. This matters when it comes to chunking, et cetera, in the back end, but again, way above and beyond the scope of this lesson here. We have plugins that you can also use. So Shopify, Zapier, Wolfram Alpha, Gmail, a web scraper. They have so many tools here, and you can get super creative with how you build these chatbots. But aside from that, what we really want to do is integrate this with Bubble. Yeah, that's all fine and dandy that we can make this cool thing in Stack AI, but it doesn't really do anything if we can't put it on our software app and make it look native to our application. So let's do that. Let's go ahead and, of course, publish this, because when you're building chatbots and something on a third party, you're going to always pretty much have to publish it for it to go live and for you to be able to capture that data. So it's uploaded or published. Let's go to export. Now in export, it's going to give you the shareable form, which is this URL that you can then embed, or you can do what I like to do, which is fully customizing it using the APIs. So you see the form, which you'll give an iframe here if you wanted to do something like that. But in our case, we want to go fully customizable API endpoint. Now, of course, our trusty curl command. So make sure you show token when you're copying. That way it copies over. You can see this is a pretty basic curl command, so it shouldn't be that hard to set up. Go ahead and copy this. Let's come to Bubble. We left off in our voice flow page. Let's go ahead and add a new page just for Stack AI. We'll go ahead and create. Then let's head over to our plugins and make one for Stack AI. So we'll call this Stack AI, and then we will get rid of the API call. It gives us an import our own from curl. So import from curl, paste that in, and everything is, well, set up for you, of course. So Stack AI, we can just call this chat. We'll use as action. Looks good. Post request. The URL looks good. We don't need any parameters. Content type, application JSON. Authorization, already done for us. Our bearer and API key. Let's go ahead and make those private. Then you can see down here we have in tax 0. Now notice that's how it associates it with its modules. Come back here to build. You can see that in TAC0 is associated with the input module. Zoom in, we can see that there. And if we go down to search, you can see URL EMB TAC0 is associated with URL search. We could also make that dynamic if we wanted to. We just add the variable, right? Over here, you can see it uses those variables in the prompt. So we have the URL EMB TAC0 and our input IN TAC0. So that's how it uses it, stores it as variables, and they use those same variables as parameters when you're using their API. Let's go back and finish this off. So we'll have two dynamic variables here. One is going to be the user input, user underscore input, not ID, input. And then we'll have the user ID. So we'll have user underscore ID, just like so. And for the user input, we can just say test. For the user ID, say 123. Uncheck the private so we have access to those. And let's go ahead and initialize the call. So give it a second to load. It should pop up with everything that you need in order to make this work or integrate it with our workflow. Of course, it said, I'm sorry, I couldn't find anything associated to your question or input, yada, yada, yada. That's because we gave it a test, didn't even know what that means. But let's head over and set up our design so we can get into our workflow. Same design, we're gonna have an input. So we'll select our input field, drag it on the screen, get our button, and then get our group, or in this case, just a text box. So we'll drag that on, make it a little large just to capture it. Of course, we're gonna need that state variable. So we'll just do AI response, and we'll give it a text variable or state type. Create, we'll leave it default, and then we just make sure we display it. So we'll get our text and then our AI response. Great. Now we are ready to get into the workflow. So let's make this submit, not edit, and then add workflow. Okay, what needs to happen here? Well, we're just using one API endpoint. So really it's just like using OpenAI's chat completion endpoint, very basic. Go to plugin, Stack AI chat, and all we have is the user input and user ID. Again, the user ID can be dynamic. So we'll do current user, unique ID, and for the input, of course, we'll do input A's value. Great. Next thing we need to do is just, well, change the state variable. So we'll set the state. We'll come and select text A, AI response, and it's simply going to be the result of step 1, output 0. Notice it uses that out TAC 0 again, which is exactly, oops, we just almost deleted that. Zoom out, and you can see that out TAC 0 is associated with out TAC 0. So that's how we get that information. Let's go ahead and preview this. Come to our data, we'll run as a specific user, and let's see if this works. So let's ask, what are your turnaround times? Submit, run through the steps. Looks like it gets everything we need. And then, of course, it's going to return the result. Software development request, turnaround time depends on complexity, but on average, 72 hours or less. However, more complex tasks take longer to finish. Now, Stack AI was pretty easy to implement. In fact, you probably could have done that on your own very easily. I just wanted to introduce the tool, give you a basic understanding of how it works, but you can play around with this yourself, go much more in depth than we did here. There's tons and tons of use cases here that you could use Stack AI for. A lot of businesses nowadays focus their time and attention on training these models. So what better way to do it than Stack AI? Well, unless you're custom coding, there really is no better solution. This is the best AI model, no-code tool there is. So if you run into a project or you want to do it yourself, where you're training models, you're uploading data, you're configuring LLMs, this is where you're going to want to go. And that is actually the end of this lesson. So congratulations if you made it to the end. You now should have a very good understanding of how AI works, how to use no-code tools to use it and integrate it back to Bubble, the whole 9. But I want to share some final thoughts with you in a conclusion video, so I'll see you over there.